Well, hello, everyone. Welcome once again to the Adventures Travel Club television show. Betty, we find ourselves going up the hill to
Where?
Pergamum. Don't you remember?
Yeah, I know.
That's
I just
her.
have to sound dumb once in a while, just so that
I'm not going to touch that with a 10-foot pole. Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, look right down the hill. We see the remains of an old aqueduct that the Romans built. And we're going to find out more about that today, how they actually got water, see, from that lake down there, clear up to the top of the Acropolis, where we're going to see here in Pergamum in just a moment. This is quite a feat that they were able to do. But let's listen to our guide, Mamet, now, as he explains a little bit about this particular area.
The Asclepion, or the health center, is way out here. And from the lower part of this hilltop, Acropolis, there is the sacred road that remains still visible, which leads to the Asclepion, the health center. But from here, going all the way down there, is hell of a job, of course, for us. So after visiting this area, we come back to the car park and go to this place by bus, which makes it easier and more comfortable for everybody.
Okay.
In Roman times, the city grew extensively, and they are still talking about a population of not less than 150,000 people over here. I don't mean up there, on top of the mountain, down the hill and all in the plain, because most of the people live in the plain anyhow. The upper citadel is basically reserved for certain people and then for defense purposes against the attacks of the enemies and all that. And because of that, it's easy to see, even on the map, there used to be one amphitheater, Colosseum, like the one in Rome, with a capacity of 30,000 people. 30,000 people. Another one, a Roman theater here, which is sort of behind those pine trees down in the plain over there. But we have one more up here. When we go up there, I'm going to show you this earliest theater, the Greek theater. It really has the Greek features, not the Roman features, being the earliest one. And it used to house, or it could take only 10,000 people. So during Roman times, it was too small. They decided to build one large one here, and it was not sufficient. Finally, they ended up with the Colosseum, unfortunately destroyed. The one in Rome is in a very good state of preservation, but not over here.
Betty, I had no idea how huge this area is, how much room it takes up.
160,000 people live there.
How fine the blocks of stones are. Huh? And it's this mountain. You sort of carve out of rock, cut it into fine shapes and pieces like that, and these are the Hellenistic walls, we call them, because during Hellenistic period, it's the technique that when we go to Troy tomorrow, you're going to see great differences between the walls over here and the walls of Troy, which are earlier in date. In earlier times, you have the blocks of stones, but you can see the rock pieces over there, for instance. They are sort of made smaller, but they are all odd shapes. Some smaller, some bigger, some sort of, square, some rectangular, etc. They just sort of pile them on top of each other, and they call them the city walls in earlier times. It's only with Hellenistic culture you begin to see the rustica work or the fine work of masonry, that the blocks are chiseled and cut in a fine way. Yet, because of their weight, of course, you don't need any cement, mortar, or brick in between. So you just put them on top of each other like that. Whereas in the background, you see the blocks are smaller, and then there is brick in between. Now, during the very late phase of Roman Empire, we understand this as well, the different phases or stages. During the late Roman period, about 3rd century AD, they began to use brick in the walls, putting it between the layers of stones and all that. But the ones you see over there are even later than that, because that part of the high wall collapsed after earthquakes and all that. So it is the restorations done during the Byzantine period. As you saw some of them from the bus, when we were climbing up. They just found whatever material stones over here, they put them on top of each other to defend the city against the Arab raids and all that. So they were all they began to build them as from like 5th, 6th century AD. And these city walls, fortification walls, became more necessary after, during the course of 7th to 11th centuries, Arab attacks as well as some other people.
And it's interesting to notice that this upper area was just for the nobility only, except, Betty, for the waterworks and storehouses, right?
Yeah, that's what was on the top level. When you think about it as being 4 levels, it's kind of hard to comprehend, to figure it out. At least for me it was.
But this is a royal road. Now, the general population lived down in the middle and the lower areas. But in case they had an invasion, from wherever, and the lower areas fell to the invaders, then the population could come up here, because this would be the last, last stronghold. But in times of peace, that citadel up there was just for the privileged and also for some of the soldiers. Now, this is also where we see where the water would come in, and we saw those aqueducts a little while ago. Those aqueducts were developed during Roman times, and this is a cistern that we see right here. And they had 2-story aqueducts, and they were built between the hills, and the channel for the water was right on top of the aqueducts. And then they bore a hole through the mountain using brick pipes for their plumbing, or they would go around the mountain, and then they used manpower for the last stage of that to pump it up the hill. But that was all roofed over because they had to keep that water clean. That was important, yeah.
Think of the engineering feat that amounted to, huh?
I know.
Was the use of slave labor quite prevalent then, too?
I would suspect so, because, the general population, I think, of a lot of these cities were mainly slaves, like we learned about down in Ephesus, right? Yeah, so that was...
But it was a little different kind of slaves, because we did learn, too, that the slaves did get their freedom, and they did have homes.
Some of them were wealthy.
Yes. So it wasn't like we think of as slaves.
Well,
maybe in some instances, huh?
Probably so, yeah. Well, I'm just glad that I wasn't one of them. But anyway, this mountain had to be leveled, the top of it, to build all of these temples, and they used a lot of that natural block that we saw from the hillside. Isn't that beautiful?
That something?
That is. And Betty, then they added the marble later. They had to lug the marble up the hill, but from a distance. But look at the carvings up there. Isn't that gorgeous?
These were a very unusual type of carving that they have here that was just done in this area. There's something really about dancing or agile or something figures. I don't remember quite what it was.
Well, maybe they were joyous people up there, huh?
Maybe so.
Well, being up on a mountaintop like that, they were pretty well protected, and you had the general population down below. Again, from the invasion that they had. But we're going to learn a little bit more now about this water system, how that came up the hill.
Again, just a little bit up over here. Not all the way to the top, but just up to this level with the velocity of the water itself. Reaching the lower part of this mountain. And from there, manpower. Pump it up. Pump it up into this. This is the system they applied during Roman times for each and every city. But in the case of Pergamum, especially this Acropolis, it was...
It's like it would have been easier to build a town over there.
I think I agree. It probably would have been easier to build a town there. But we have to remember that they were building temples for their gods and the goddesses. Yeah, and also, too, you think, I would want to be up high on a hill, too, if I were going to be invaded by somebody, wouldn't you?
Well, yes.
I want to see them coming.
Don't we still like to be up on a hill where we have a view anytime, anywhere, any place?
You pay premium prices for that anywhere that you are.
That's true. The
view
is wonderful, and of course the view up there was absolutely spectacular. You saw so far.
Betty, I wanted to ask you now. I have never been to Greece, so I've never seen the the Parthenon in Greece, and the areas like that. How does this compare to what you see in Athens?
Oh, golly. I don't know how to answer that question, really, because it's all been restored, and so what you see the complete picture, and I would have to think that in Greece it was larger. I don't think there was that much land around it. There weren't that many edifices, but Greece, it just looks so different because of the state of repair that it was in.
Well, and we can see that they're still doing a lot of work here. It was stated too, I think, that when people did come up here and found a lot lot of this after it had been deserted, that a lot of the statuary was still in pretty good repair. Look who's up there.
Look at Diana up there. Deanna, honest to gosh, she was the most daring person. I keep saying, Deanna, stop that. But she was very careful.
She took a lot of photographs,
like
didn't she?
4,000, something like that.
Is that right, that many? Oh, golly.
She always does on all the trips.
That's
she
great.
is a photographer.
Well, she does a terrific job, I'll tell you. And yeah, of course, this is a photographer's dream. You get up here on top. I mean, everywhere you look. In fact, she was telling me. She says, "Marv, did you go down here around there?" And I said, "No, I didn't. I was lugging this camera around."
Yeah,
I said, but she was, snapping and bingo off to another place. She was telling me about some of the places there that I didn't get a chance to see, but that were interesting. So when I go back the next time, I'll take a look.
Next time, and you will actually know more of what we're looking for and looking at. But I laughed when Dr. Garcia called me after with pictures with his little recorder, Betty, I don't know where we are. Identify them. So often when you take your own pictures with the camera like that, you don't identify it as you go along, and it's boom, 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 boom.
Well, that's true. And the thing is that we saw so much on this trip. This was it. I was not prepared for this. I had no idea that we would see the magnificent ruins and a lot of the reconstruction that we saw on this trip. I mean, to me, it was a real eye-opener. I think by the time I finished this trip, you could say probably almost finished maybe like a semester in college.
That's really true, and we do learn as we go along with it. And I think all of the people on the trip felt that way too. They were just astounded. And for the people that have called in making comments on the show, they themselves, they'll say, I had no idea that Turkey was like that. It's fun. It's really fun to educate people and have them enjoy it at the same time, including myself.
Yeah, well, that goes for all of us. It really does. But I think it's so amazing to see you have with the mixture of the Greco-Roman construction here, as he explained that to us earlier, and these carvings. And of course, we have to remember too that so many of these places, as they were being rediscovered, I guess we should say, that a lot of the statuary went to, and a lot of the carvings went to a lot of the museums all over the world.
There's a big display in England, and I've been there several times, but I wouldn't have even been interested until I came here and saw what I would be going back to look for. Mm-hmm. Now it's much more meaningful.
Betty, look at this theater. Look how steep this thing is.
That is the steepest theater in the world. It's right on the precipice there.
How many does that seat?
15,000 people. And Roland was running down those steps, and I was saying, don't you run, you might break your leg, Oh, but I'm strong. I said, has nothing to do with being strong.
Well, I'll tell you, just walking it gave me my exercise.
Yes, but that was really interesting because it had a stage that could be removed. And way up at the very topmost seat, the most glorious view, right smack down to the valley and on the way to the Aegean Sea. It was just really a spectacular place to visit and pause and reflect.
And this was just one of the 3 theaters that were in this whole complex here. There was one that was built by the Greeks, and of course this one was built by the Romans. And it, as you can see, it's and the same thing too is that the acoustics are so good. It seems like everywhere that the Romans did build these amphitheaters, they all had. I mean, they picked a great spot. They had a great view. It's a little bit of a kind of a foggy, schmoggy day, so you can't. All we can see is a little bit more of the hillside. But I would imagine that you might be able to see out over the hills and clear to the Aegean.
They said that. How do you go down those stairs? Carefully, very carefully.
And in the times that the Greeks and the Romans were here, that all of the area that we're seeing here, where this main highway goes through, that was all inhabited also by the people. And as we stated before, that only the nobility and some of the military were up in that Acropolis area, and of course the priests and priestesses and oracles, I guess.
Look what you did there. That's wonderful. You were up high coming down. You did a great job there. That gives us a better perspective.
Well, thank you for the compliment, but all you had to do is just point and shoot.
Oh, come on. It's not that easy. Ask Dr. Garcia.
But it really is it's magnificent. Now we're going to try, and I'm as you can see, Betty, I'm going, shall I or shall I not? I want to go down into that amphitheater, and this was just carved out of some rocks, and of course then we can see that some of this was built up too as we get down on the other side of it. But I want to go down very, very carefully here. And, I'm sure glad I wasn't a Roman after a great big drinking party trying to go down
here. No, my word, no. Now, look you really see how steep it is. And we were very, very careful. Of course, we're always careful. And I think it was, who was it that sat down on the rocks going down?
You mean that's how they got themselves
you
down?
just sat from rock,
from rock to rock.
From step to step. You just sat and like a baby would do. You know. Well, it was nice and safe.
Sure. Well, maybe the Romans and the Greeks were a little more sure-footed.
Well, I don't know. Maybe I don't know about that.
Anyway, we can see now here. Now we're inside the theater, as we can see, and looking back up, and there are probably the cheap seats up here. I think, I don't know.
Yeah, I know who it was. Loretta Scranton, I think it was, that sat down. You heard Trudy, but anyway, it was a smart thing to do.
Sure. And now we can see. Yeah, I just wish it were a little clearer so we could see clear out to the sea. But look at that. I mean, now that is a steep angle, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, but that was fun. That was interesting.
I hate to see the road there, though. It kind of spoils it. You think, oh my gosh, take that road away. Let's keep it old.
You know, probably that was maybe even a main highway during the Greek and the Roman times too. I would suspect.
What was that right in the back there, Marv?
That was more of this area, but there were also some storage areas too. I think Mamet was saying that, and of course what they had to have for things that they were going to do here within the theater.
Then the stage was right down below there, so that that was a portable stage that they could put on and off again. I think maybe not this one. Yes, it did. I just said that it could be removed and then used further. Then that area could be used for something else.
Well, it's still back up on top of the hill. This is the foundation here of where the temple to Zeus was. In the pine trees. And Betty, you know a little bit about this, right?
Not a whole lot, but I do know that the Zeus altar was the largest temple. I don't know largest temple where, but it was a tremendously big temple. The walls were 350 feet long, and they were covered with carvings representing the battles of the gods and the titans. You know, they did things so well.
They certainly did. We're going to learn a little bit more about this, too, as we see a little drawing here as Mamet explains some more to us.
Outer and inner pillars.
Now, did they remove all of those pillars?
The pillars were tumbled down, some here, some went down, and some were used.
The statue then?
The reliefs were intact as late as last century, 125 years ago. They were still here, lying around.
Well, that's probably when all of the explorers and the folks gathered up all of these things for their museums, like in the London Museum and other places around the world.
They stole them. But, you know, I think it's marvelous that they have those diagrams, because other than that, you would stand up there and you wouldn't really know unless you had a guide. Well, yeah.
Well, no, that's true. It would just look like a pile of rocks, you know. So we're going to head down the hill now in the bus, and then we're going to turn around and we're going to take a look back up the hill so we can actually get another perspective of just a portion of that area that we were in. You have to realize that it was built all the way around the top of the mountain. There we are.
You see?
Isn't that something? It's really incredible.
That's all. If you move your eyes further to the right from there, just follow the telephone wire ahead of you. You see another retaining wall. That's the middle town, roughly. Actually, just below the telephone wire, there's a building with red roof, and all the way down, another retaining wall, the temple and the gymnasia, a few of them over there. And further on, just over the head of Diana and over the electricity pole, you see the city walls of Byzantine period. And then the lower town is difficult to see because it's further on the extreme right. And from the lower skirt of this mountain is the sacred road taking us to Asclepion, or the health center, the way we pronounce it. This is called the Divine or Sacred Road, flanked by towers, by columns and capitals.
And Betty, this Roman period lasted for 400 years.
Yeah, and during that time they had that really famous medical scholar. I'm not really sure about his name. I don't know how to pronounce it. Galenus, I think it is, Galenus. And he wrote 500 books all about the history of medicine, which is being used today.
It's still in use today?
The history of it, of course.
Well, and so we're just entering this particular complex, and as we can see, here's a diagram of it. We're going to learn a little bit more about it right now.
What are they? Snakes. So what's the snake doing over here in this round thing? Eating. or I should say drinking. Drinking, because this is the hot springs, of course, of those types of things. Health center, people come here seeking for treatment, various types of therapy. So that is the place, the sort of round thing, like in the shape of a plate, is the place where the water is springing, used to spring from.
Well, Betty, there is a spring right here. I mean, it's supposed to have all sorts of miraculous cures, right?
I drank from it.
Did you get cured of anything?
I didn't have anything to be cured of. I'm pretty healthy.
But you know, I noticed some of the things that we were told and some of the things that we read. Oh, excuse me, there's that other amphitheater and in this particular area here.
Yeah, and you
that's
know
still used, isn't
that's big, and that's about 4,500 people for that time, and in the area that it is, I mean, it's for the sick people. Yeah, they use it once a year. For during the May, they have some festival or something in May.
You know, a lot of these, in fact, a lot of the areas that we were in, a lot of those are still used for today. Carol, get off that thing. There's something on there, something written on there. She found a real good place to sit down, didn't she?
Yeah, you scared her now.
I think I did.
No, it's all right, Carol.
We were trying to read that. Kappa,
Don't
Delta,
let him bully you.
Chi, Alpha, Pi.
It's all Greek to me.
It is. I was trying to remember my Greek alphabet from my college
That
days.
was a joke.
Oh, it was?
It's all Greek
no, but it
to
is
me.
Greek to you. It's Greek to everybody else too. Anyway, enough of that. Well, we got to tell a little bit about this area.
Okay.
Now, you got to stop and buy some cards first. But this was a whole health area, right? I mean, there were doctors here, and Betty, they were into some things that I thought were just modern, like psychoanalysts, psychoanalyzing.
Oh, they did some incredible things there. I know. As I was reading about it and was told about it, they used things like dreaming, and they had healing through psychoanalysis, and they had to tell about their dreams, and the god then would tell them what medicine to take. It took the pressure off the doctors if the gods were responsible. Then, if it didn't work, blame it on the gods.
Yeah, blame it on. Oh my golly. Well, but this was amazing, because there were thousands of people that would come to this area for the cures, because this was a whole I guess we call it today a hospital, spa. What else would you call it?
I don't know, but anything that you had wrong with you, I know, because they did mud baths here too. So maybe you went to get beautiful along with being healed internally. You could do it externally.
But they said too that there were a lot of people that actually really were cured here. I mean, some people got their were able to speak after they drank out of the fountain. I don't know.
Anyway, if you believe enough in something, psychologists tell you that or psychiatrists, you can make yourself get well if you really truly believe it. So sure, why shouldn't they? More power to them. I'm all for it.
And bottle up some of that water from the sacred spring, right?
Yeah.
But this was magnificent. I mean, and again, folks, we have to remember this is all part of Pergamum here. This was in the lower level that we could see a little bit from the mountaintop when we were up on top of the Acropolis. But I'll tell you, this was something. And we're going to go now down underneath the ground. You see just part of the stuff here on top, but underneath there was even more. I mean, this was incredible.
You're talking about the sacred tunnel of whispers?
Oh yeah, tell us about
Oh my gosh, this is incredible. You know, there were 12 openings in the roof, and the priests would get up on the roof, and then they'd whisper down, and the people would think that they were being helped by the gods, that the gods were telling them. And we tried it. We sat there, whispered, and oh, God! But I guess whatever you believe, huh?
Well, they were using psychology in those days too, huh?
Yeah, they sure did, and what a cop out really for the priests that were up there whispering suggestions. Hey, it's not really for me.
Well, let's find out some more about this area.
So when some of our friends, like the deep sleepers, that you cannot wake them up. So they could use this area depending on the summer winter conditions, and also those outpatients whenever this was like forming a natural tunnel passageway between the hospital to the open air, open ground, for the patients to do their therapeutic treatment.
Like Mayo Clinic.
Mayo Clinic.
Yeah, Mayo Clinic is underground.
Watch your step, please, because it's a little bit uneven.
I got a kick out of John Mendes. The
Mayo
Mayo
Clinic.
Clinic of Turkey, huh?
Well, I suppose it surpassed the Mayo Clinic because of they had so many things that they offered here. I even know that they had I know now why we had all kinds of people go there, because they had a spring of cold water that was supposed to be the fountain of youth.
Oh, that's what that
So
spring
that
was.
what one of the springs were. The
Uh-huh. Now, I
fountain
see,
of
I
youth.
told you, we really then should have bottled that stuff up, and we
That's
should have
probably
brought it
why I
back.
drank it, because they told me at the time.
And that is not the official entrance to the clinic or to the hospital. Admission for inpatient was on the other side. I mean, those, both on stretchers and whatever.
Marv, above the entrance where there was the inscription, "In the name of the gods, death is forbidden to enter here." What is, how nice,
Boy,
huh?
okay, yeah.
They got
Oh,
the order.
Do you think it was guaranteed, though?
No.
This is we have to explain that this area. Now, this was actually the entrance here, and this was a round area here. I mean, it was like a circle, because when we came in from the backside. That tunnel was, as he said, the outpatient tunnel going to the hospital. But this was the admission area, and I mean, this is really something. So they must have handled, thousands of people here.
People, sure. People came from far and near to get cured.
Well, again, that little well was doing its job.
Was doing well.
And if you walk around the building, you'll see there's the staircase just a little back there to give you the idea that it was two-storied, as the staircase is the original. And what do you want first?
May I have your Medicare card, please?
Okay, Mary.
Your insurance?
See, they were even asking for it back in those days. How
Well,
about-
Mary's an old hand. That's what she does.
Yeah,
That's her job, really. And Mary, you did very well.
Yeah, you did very well. Yeah, did you take any deposits from those people that didn't have Medicare cards or insurance?
Well, I'm sure they had something comparable even then to help people out that couldn't afford to pay.
Yeah, maybe there was Roman socialized medicine.
Probably. Why not?
Could have been. Anyway, this area, of course, now we can see a drawing of what it must have looked like in its heyday, and that is really something, isn't it?
I can't get this. I mean, it's just too much for me to see what we saw and to imagine that that's the way it was. Oh, wow.
It's really something. Just really
And
something.
it's so sad, isn't it, Marv, that it all has disappeared. Yeah.
Well, it is, and the thing is, like we've talked about before, I think our civilization is going to be pretty much that way, too, in a few thousand years. I mean, we don't save anything.
No.
And I mean, these people didn't go out to destroy this. I mean, just a period of time, and of course, they were invaded and whatever. But, it's great, though, that they are, and that the various governments from around the world are putting
Working
money
on it,
into
yeah.
that, to go ahead and restore it, because it is very, very important.
Well, they had so many bad earthquakes, so nature took its toll rather than just the carelessness of people or the leaving it behind. Of course, the wars were very detrimental.
That's true. We are now heading north, and we're going to head toward Troy, and now you can just see a little bit about olives here. And I think we went for one day, and all we saw were olive trees. I mean, the mountains were covered with olive trees. Hey, Betty, that's about all the time that we have now, but if people are interested in the trips we have coming up, give Betty a call, and your number is?
488-7443.
See you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.